Hello and welcome to the 8th part of our e-lecture series International Project Management. In this part we're still discussing the planning phase being the second phase in the project life cycle. Risk management is a key task that needs to be done in the framework of the planning phase. We talked already a little bit about the risk management and risk analysis. What is it involving? So, a risk analysis is intended at the beginning of the project, before the project is initiated, to look at the different kind of risks that may occur during the project. And you need to rank and evaluate the risks based on two dimensions. One is likelihood of occurrence. So how likely is it that one risk is actually going to occur, going to happen? And what is the damage on the project? So what is the impact of this risk on the implementation in terms of quality and cost of the project. In order to do that, you plot a so-called risk matrix, and I've done that before in the last session using the whiteboard. Here it's a bit illustrated more nicely. The risk matrix is having two dimensions, like I said. One is the likelihood, the probability of the occurrence, and that one, on this axis you have the impact or the potential damage a certain kind of risk is having on the project in general. And here you have three different kind of aspects. Here is low, medium and high. It is also okay to have a more simple one, more comprehensive one, and you just have two rankings. So high and low would also be okay to arrive at a 4-square portfolio. But here it's a bit more complex. You have 9 squares here. And of course, the risks that have a high probability bundled with a high potential damage on the project, these need to be monitored very, very carefully. And all these risks which are identified, which are in this square here, in this region, you need to state countermeasures for each risk. So if the risk is actually occurring, what are you doing if it really happens? So what are the actions that you can plan in order to be executed, to be done, to compensate the damage of the risk? Those risks, of course, here, like those ones, they don't need to be monitored very, very thoroughly. However, this one, the risk analysis, is very important to state that this is not that this shouldn't be static. So you do it once at the beginning in the planning phase and then it's gone. No, this doesn't make any sense. You have to do this on an ongoing basis. So you always need to monitor how the risks are going to develop in the framework of the project execution. So for example, a risk may be some kind of new legislation, a new kind of government, new regulations in your industry, but you're not quite sure whether they really occur, will pass the parliament, for example. But if they occur, then the risk is coming into place and you need to undertake, or you need to take into consideration these countermeasures which you have to identify beforehand. So let me go back one more time to the matrix. It is very important to state that, of course, risk A can develop like this in the framework of the project, and other risks, they have a potentially higher damage, or the likelihood of a risk is increased. So you need to do risk monitoring, risk management on an ongoing basis. So this is very, very important. This is really paramount in the framework of international project management, that you do that. In the network plan, we've looked at the network plan before. I've mentioned that. We have a network, so a graph and illustration, which lists all working packages, and you can see what is the duration of the working package. Can the working package be executed independent from another one, or is there some dependency? Can they be executed in parallel? So what are the different kind of relationships? So a network plan, as such, has a clear beginning and a clear ending, and every element consists of a process and its initial, so its starting date and the final date. So this is very helpful when it comes to project management, because it provides you with the ability, with the option to do so-called critical path analysis. We call this critical path analysis, CPA. The critical path in a project, if you look at the project flow of the working packages, of the milestones, at the different kind of tasks, is always the path with the longest duration, and it links all tasks together, it bundles all tasks which have no time buffer. So when the time buffer is 0, what does it mean? So if a task is linked to another one and you don't have any time buffer in between, if the tasks, the completion of this specific task is lasting 1 day longer, the entire project will be prolonged, so by 1 day. Therefore, these tasks which are on the critical path, they all have a time buffer of 0. And these tasks need to be monitored with specific thoroughness, because every deviation from the time plan would lead to prolongation of the entire project. You can of course only do critical path analysis if you thought about before, like we did in this tool we called work package description, about all the dependencies between the different kind of tasks. So if you don't list any dependencies, of course there's no critical path, because they all can be done in parallel and independent from another. This doesn't make sense, of course. So it is very, very crucial to always state the dependencies in order also to visualize that with the help of the software. And of course you need to state, like we said before, the resource expenditure of every kind of task being involved. So what makes sense in practice is that you have, like I said before, something like a task list. So a list of dates in order to monitor and control the project. So you need to specify for every kind of task what is the number of the task, so identification number. I was giving a recommendation when we talked about the work breakdown structure. And then you need to state who is going to do it, until when, which kind of cost, and what is the status. So, and you do it in a simple Excel slide. That's fine in an Excel sheet, because it provides you an overview. You can also flag or set a traffic light for the different kind of tasks then in terms of the status. So if something is green, so everything is on time. You don't need to monitor those thoroughly. But the orange ones or the red ones, when you say, oh, we are already lacking behind the anticipated timeline, then you have an issue. And an Excel tool helps you to list all the red flagged activities and to monitor and manage the project more effectively and efficiently. The schedule, we've listed that, or we talked about that already, which lists all the different kind of working packages. And in the Gantt chart, which is compiled by the project management software, you see the different kind of tasks, and you also see, like I mentioned, the dependencies, if they have been identified. So what the software usually does is, if you have all the tasks here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you specify, oh, this is a specific task, like doing this, A, B, C, and you usually specify in the software, you have a column here, and it says, oh, what is the predecessor? So what kind of tasks need to be completed for this to be starting? And here you would write A, you need to complete A until then B cannot start. So you have A, very simple B. And you need to state all these dependencies in order to arrive at a sophisticated planning and to be able to do a sophisticated milestone and critical path analysis. Capacity and resource planning. We talked about that already. You need to think about what are the qualifications that your people need. Is every resource in the house, is it able to carry out and execute the project to the full satisfaction of or with respect to the goals which need to be accomplished? That's a question mark. So probably you also need to weigh the costs. For example, if you have lawyers in-house in your organization, in your company, of course they have internal costs. So if you book them for a project and they need to look at a case, costs are involved, time is involved, costs are involved. And sometimes, in some instances, it makes more sense to hire external lawyers to work on the project. So this is what you need to do and take into consideration. Also, in some instances, probably your people may lack qualification. So you need, for example, an environmental engineer to do a certain kind of report, to compile a certain kind of report for you if this is involved in the project. So you need to specify for how long do you require these specific people that work in the team, in the project. What are the additional materials you need, like computers, anything else, any aids? And are there individual materials that are not available, like we said, for the people as well, which you need to buy or lease? So you have to derive in the end the necessary technological, material and HR capacities. So this is the resource planning, and you have to do this on the basis of the different kind of tasks. Planning is a very crucial phase. It's a very, very important phase. The graph here looks complicated, but it's not. What it is saying simply is that in a lot of instances in real life, planning is not done thoroughly. So it means that if you invest heavy time in thorough planning at the beginning, here, this pays off in the end. So in the framework of the project, this pays off. If you invest little time in the planning phase, here, in the framework or in the timeline of the project, this will explode in our result in very, very cumbersome challenges, risks, workload, etc., etc. So for example, if you don't have a sophisticated dependency planning, floor plan, milestone planning, and you think of these tools only while already executing the project, all the execution, all the coordination, communication will be hampered, and this will lead to higher risk and higher complexity. So planning pays off in the end. This was the 8th part of our e-lecture series. Thank you very much for your attention. We are very much looking forward to seeing you again on this channel, and we wish you all the best of luck for your projects in real life. Cheers and bye-bye.